If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy, and, well, this is an interesting story. Former Fugees rapper Pras Michel, not sure I pronounced his last name, indicted on charges of funneling millions of dollars in foreign money to then President Obama's 2020 re-election effort. This in conjunction with part of the fallout from a multi-billion-dollar fraud scandal at a Malaysian government fund. A Malaysian businessman, Mr. Low, has been indicted pending trial. According to the indictment, the Fugees rapper was paid $1 million in money received from Mr. Low to a 2012 political group that supported Obama, and an additional $865,000 to straw donors to support Mr. Obama's campaign, people he reimbursed for their contributions. Well, that's interesting. Boy, foreign involvement in a presidential election, financing of, influence peddling in. Interesting. That's one strain of inquiry I'd like to pursue with Peter Baker from the New York Times. Another is Kamala Harris. It's interesting. It seems like Kamala, but particularly Beto O'Rourke, having problems getting their footing. Beto's just disappeared.
Well, he's going to do a restart. He's
that's why
have a big reveal, a new, here I am again. Campaign rally.
Well, I don't know exactly how he's going to capture the old black magic. I don't know, but it's obvious that he needs to. And Kamala hasn't been invisible the way Beto has, but partly because she's a member of the Senate, she's been on the questioning of Bill Barr and other things. But she still doesn't really have a message, and she's still struggling with trying to explain away what she said at a CNN town hall earlier this year with Jake Tapper, that she supports eliminating all private health insurance. Well, she sat down with Jake Tapper again over the weekend, and that issue was raised, and she tried to address it. See if you're convinced.
It was in the context of saying, let's get rid of all the bureaucracy. Let's get all of the ways.
Oh, not the insurance companies.
No, that's not what I meant. I know it was interpreted that way. If you watch the tape, I think you'll see that there are obviously many interpretations of what I said. What I meant is let's get rid of the bureaucracy. As it relates
to Medicare.
But the bill
gets rid of insurance.
But no. It does not get rid of insurance. It does not get rid of insurance. And listen, and let me just tell you where I am. Let's tell you where I am.
All right.
I support Medicare for all. It is my preferred
As a principle, you mean, not Bernie Sanders' bill?
I support the bill.
Okay.
I support the bill.
Well, because the bill gets rid of private insurance for everything that
it doesn't get rid of supplemental insurance.
Right, for cosmetic surgery, but for all...
So it doesn't get rid of all insurance.
Okay, it doesn't get rid of all insurance,
right.
But for all essential health care benefits.
But why? Ask the question why.
So it does.
The question, the answer to that question is because Medicare for all and the vision of what it will be includes an expansion of coverage. So Medicare for all will include vision, it'll include dental, it'll include hearing aids.
And it'll do all that without any bureaucracy. She's a mess on this issue. The fact is what Jake Tapper is saying is right. The revised bill prohibits any medical provider, quote, from entering into a private contract with an individual enrolled under Medicare for America or any item or service coverable under Medicare for America. In addition, the law automatically enrolls babies in the new government program at birth. So this is yes, Americans can still use private insurance in some circumstance, but the legislation squeezes out the private insurance market in short order. She knows it. That's why she went from saying she's for private health insurance to explaining why she's not for private health insurance. Interesting stuff. Meanwhile, Bernie wants the post offices to get into banking. Let's talk a little 2020 with Peter Baker. He's the chief White House correspondent at the New York Times. He's also the author of a couple of books, Days of Fire, Bush and Cheney in the White House, and Obama, The Call of History. Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me.
What about this story about the Fugees rapper? I'm sure you're a fan. Killing Me Soft. Did they do a remake of Killing Me Softly?
Killing Me Softly. It's the Fugees.
It did what I say, Fugees?
Yeah, Fugees.
Fugees?
You're so old.
I am. So what about this though? The idea, all of this talk about wanting to see Trump's financial records, wanting to see his personal finances because we see if he's doing business with foreign governments, particularly obviously Russia. And here we have this other interesting story about foreign money influencing the 2012 reelection of President Obama.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the story enough to give a smart comment on it. I mean, I think that's obviously a concern going back many years about foreign government trying to influence elections. The question is whether or not the people on this side cooperate with that or take advantage of that or aware of that. And that's the kind of thing that we've been dealing with for a long time. I started in the White House beat back in 1996 when we were discussing President Clinton and some of this foreign money that was coming into the United States back then. So this is that's not a new thing. What's interesting is what would be interesting to know, I'm not familiar enough to say, is what knowledge there was on the part of the people here in the United States and what was, where did that go?
With respect to just sticking with Obama for a minute, David Axelrod, suggesting that Joe Biden's campaign is in full gaffe prevent defense mode, and that's apparently where they think they need to be right now as Biden sits atop the polls, including in the early states. Is that your sense of it as well?
Well, I think they understand that one of his big vulnerabilities is that he's a chatty, loquacious fellow who it says what comes into his head. Sometimes what comes into his head isn't as thought through as his aides would like it to be, and that can cause him problems to explain later. You played the tape of Kamala Harris trying to explain away previous comments, and that's a career concern that Vice President Biden has had over the course of decades in public life. Now, the flip side is that some people find that to be more authentic. I mean, President Trump obviously doesn't stick to a script either. There is some advantage or some appeal to politicians simply saying what they actually think. But if you end up finding yourself having to explain more than to, get across your point, then that's taking away time when you need campaigning for policy making and other priorities. So I think that they're very on top of that. That's something they're trying to get instilled in him. Be more disciplined. He's never been a front runner before. He's never gotten past 1% in the Iowa caucuses, so he's gotten a lot more attention this time around, and it's going to be trained on him from the minute he steps foot in public, so he knows he has to be careful.
But Biden is a different candidate than Hillary Clinton. I mean, Biden at least seems like he cares, because Hillary Clinton, she just, she kept the media away from her. She seemed like she didn't have a soul during that last campaign. Do you agree?
Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? So that's the flip side is that you're absolutely focused on message discipline. You're going to come across as scripted and soulless and not very appealing. And so, in the war against gas, you have to be careful not to, find a balance someplace between being human, which people can understand, and being somebody who causes distractions that are going to be a problem for your campaign.
It seems like the Democrats are having a difficult time figuring out how to message on Trump's China policy. Obviously, they don't want to be complimentary to Trump. They're loath to say they agree with Trump on anything, but yet they've got the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer saying, stay the course with China, Mr. President. Kamala Harris, in that interview with Tapper, danced around the issue of tariffs as much as she could. This is, to my mind, a vulnerability of Trump's because it has a negative economic impact, these tariffs that he continues to impose, this trade war that rolls on. But Democrats seem incapable of distinguishing themselves on that, so he's sort of getting away with it.
Well, it's interesting. China is one of the few areas of foreign policy right now where there is kind of a bipartisan consensus, at least on the broader theory, right, which is that China has been feeding us and that we need to take a tougher line and we should stand up. And that's something Democrats like Schumer and Nancy Pelosi have talked about, as well as Republicans, for a lot of years. So that's an area where they actually share some thinking with President Trump. But you're right that the strategy, how you go about confronting China, isn't something that there's necessarily a complete consensus on. These tariffs are certainly more ambitious or, what have you, whatever word you're going to use, than Democrats have ever advocated before, because there is, in fact, as you say, some potential downsides, some real costs to consumers here. The tariffs aren't paid by the Chinese, they're paid by American consumers, and obviously there are farmers and others out there who are worried about the impact. My guess is if it leads to a deal, the short term probably won't be that important. The question is, if it doesn't lead to a deal and you have to keep these tariffs on because you want to, like, standing up to them, does that, begin to pull back on the economic gains that the president has enjoyed and that are his strongest, advantage going into next year?
Well, so Beto O'Rourke entered the race as one of ostensibly 4 candidates who you thought could put together the money to go the distance, along with Bernie and Biden and Kamala. And now he's, over the last, 4 to 6 weeks, he's been a ghost. So what happened to Beto, and how does he get back in the race?
Well, I think what happened to Beto O'Rourke is Pete Buttigieg. I think that suddenly there was a new flavor of the week, and that was Buttigieg did well on a CNN talk show, and suddenly the same folks who had gotten excited on the Democratic side about Beto O'Rourke were now excited about Pete Buttigieg. And for whatever reason, O'Rourke has, as you said, not seemed to been out there very much and making much of a splash. Now, all this is early. I mean, what really is going to be interesting to watch next month when we start the debate. That's when a lot of these candidates right now are floating around 1% of the polls or whatever, have a chance to make an impact and show what they're like. People don't know who they are. And, maybe they'll stand out, maybe they won't. But that's, I think, that's when you get past the sort of natural built-in advantage that Joe Biden and that Bernie Sanders have because they've been around for a long time. People can look at these other candidates who are new on the stage and say, well, I like this one, I don't like that one. And that's where O'Rourke and Buttigieg and Kamala Harris really need to shine.
He is Peter Baker, Chief White House Correspondent for the New York Times, author of Days of Fire, Bush and Cheney in the White House, as well as Obama, The Call of History. Peter, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great talking to you.
Take care.
Yep, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
This is Dr. Howard.